This just in. 4 out of 10 girls will be lesbians by 1978, unless...
Good morning, glory. Say there, stop that yawning. A brand new day is dawning. Pull up the shade and let the sun come through. Good morning, glory. Spend about an hour underneath a shower and keep on singing like the birdies do.
Good morning from chilly and potentially chillier Boston and Wisconsin. This is Books of the Week, the one thing that Elon Musk and Doge haven't taken away from you yet, but they're coming for us. Don't worry. Sitting across from me is Steve Donahue in Boston, the home of the Boston cream pie.
Hello, everybody. I don't know whether that teaser at the beginning was a threat or a promise.
We're looking at our people are looking into it. We'll see how it goes.
I think it's a little alarming that the hotline that was established by the absolutely naked, obvious fraud that is Doge. I find it a little alarming that when the hotline was established for people to suggest waste that could be cut, the first 30,000 suggestions were this show. I didn't know we had that many listeners.
Yes, you just hear a lot. What is this Books of the Week? I'm so tired of hearing about it, and so are you. So that's why we're back here on a Monday morning.
That's why we're back. I'm taking cod liver oil.
Health is very important. You know what's nice is I got a shot of Steve getting ready for the show this morning. I snuck in with my camera, and so we're hoping you're ready for this one, folks.
I go into the prop department of the studio. I sit in the chair and I say, "Ladies, make me beautiful." They have yet to succeed. Those of you who are listening on the podcast, they have yet to succeed.
Don't listen to him. He's gorgeous. Gorgeous, I tell you. The producer has to say that.
Almost gorgeous enough to have my own sign.
I don't have room.
The wall is over your shoulder. It's still there. It's in every show.
I'm out of wall space. I'm sorry. I can't accommodate such things. So, what is this show? You're probably asking by now.
By now.
It is a show where we, believe it or not, discuss literature and books. And I'm a librarian in Wisconsin. Steve's a book critic in Boston. And there the twain shall meet. But we like to look at a nonfiction title to start out with, and then a fiction title. And then I grabbed 5 hot potatoes off of our shelves this morning, and we're going to see if we can give Steve a couple third-degree burns. So let's see how we go.
Apparently, out there in listener land, there is now a scorecard for how many wild cards Steve has not read.
It's getting... That'll be my next T-shirt, I think. So the Steve scorecard. But let's start before we get those people sharpening their knives. Let's go to the nonfiction selection. What do you have for us today, Steve?
Well, the nonfiction selection this time around is The JFK Conspiracy by Brad Meltzer and Josh Mensch.
Mensch. It's a wonderful person, I hear.
Brad Meltzer has a long track record of writing popular nonfiction. It's a track record that has not exactly been free of controversy, but he does a really good job of writing popular nonfiction. And you'd think with the title of this book that it would be talking about one of the most popular nonfiction subjects of them all, the assassination of President Kennedy in Dealey Plaza. Yeah. But it's not. It's not talking about that. It's not talking about the assassination. It's talking about a conspiracy by a guy named Richard Pavlik in 1960 to assassinate the newly elected John F. Kennedy.
Oh, okay.
And he made plans. He followed the president's itinerary to find out where would be the most advantageous spot. The point that the authors make over and over again in their book is, believe it or not, a little subtle. I think I'm probably the first person ever to accuse Brad Meltzer of being subtle. The point is rather good, which is that Richard Pavlik does all of the things that Lee Harvey Oswald very documentedly did not do.
Yeah.
He does all the things you would expect someone to do if he was planning on assassinating a president of the United States. He plans it. Whereas not only did Lee Harvey Oswald not plan his assassination of JFK, but also if the more you dig into JFK's itinerary and the changes made that day and that week, the more you realize that it really couldn't have been planned. Mm-hmm. You really would have had a hard time planning it. Unlike At least in Dealey Plaza, you would. You knew where his plane was landing. But anyway, that we don't. That's a whole other.
All right, Oliver Stone. Let's get back to the book.
the black helicopter.
I know.
This is about that plot, Richard Pavlik's plot to kill the president in 1960.
That's interesting, right?
Yes, it's interesting when you hear about it. But how much do you want to read about Richard Pavlik, a disgruntled postal worker, as if there's any other kind? Want to read about it. I mean, think about that. Yes, he planned to kill JFK. He didn't, but he planned to. How many pages of his childhood TV viewing habits does that warrant? Okay,
well, that I'd be totally down for, but that's just me. But go ahead.
A normal reader would not. The point I'm trying to make, Brad Meltzer and John Mensch really do a good job in keeping the narrative going. This is a really, it's an easy to read book, and it's nonfiction, and that's saying something. So I don't mean to knock it in that regard, but well, there's only so much you can do with a non-story. I mean, you're going to write a lot about Kennedy, and they do, and it's all really good. And you're going to write a lot about Pavlik, and it's all really well done. But I mean, does anybody care about him? Does anybody care about him?
Well, without spoiling anything, dangerously, do we? Is Pavlik like a tragic figure? Is he just a nut? I mean, that's the thing. If he's just a bonkers,
he's just a nut. He's just dude. In fact, what I was thinking towards the end of the book, I guess our readers will not know I am, or maybe they won't know, I am steeped in Kennedy history, and especially the assassination. By the end of the book, I had one thought over and over again, and I didn't want to think it, which was that Pavlik is a lot less interesting than Lee Harvey Oswald. As a person, he's a lot less interesting.
Yeah,
I mean, you could. There have been novels written about Lee Harvey Oswald. You couldn't do that about this guy. He's just typical.
Lived with his mother, lived alone, whatever the usual.
Lived alone, creepy 1,000-mile stare, worked in a library. All the usual telltale signs of trouble.
I was going to say, if you have horribly uninteresting people in your life, watch them.
That's actually really good advice. Our authors never actually come out and say that. But our listeners won't know, but I just recently spent half a year delving into the world of serial killers, and I can tell you, never was a truer piece of advice given than if you have a studiously unmemorable person in your life, pay attention to them. Pay attention especially to the weird things they eat. Although I guess you and I are both on thin ice when it comes to
really dangerous.
Maybe I shouldn't be drawing attention to that.
Now that Steve has put me on every no-fly list and watch list in the country. Well, so there we go. And so Brad, who normally does thrillers, like political thrillers and that type of thing, and
he's just a good writer. That's all.
Wildly popular here. He's very popular.
He's just a good writer. If you read a Brad Meltzer book, you're going to want to read another one.
Yeah,
and he largely does it without debasing, his intellect, without selling you out as a reader. He largely does it without doing that. I've kind of liked his books all along.
Yeah,
and this book is entertaining. You will read it. You will finish it, even though it's a work of nonfiction about a historical event you'd never heard of before. You will finish it.
Is this his first jump into nonfiction? Has he done this before? Okay.
No, I don't know if his co-writer has always been a mensch, but he's done this before, and it's worked out really well for him. This is the antidote to the Bill O'Reilly books.
Okay.
Along the existing line. This is the antidote to those.
Okay.
Because unlike in those books, everything in this book is factually true. Whereas in those books, nothing is factually true. Except that once upon a time, we did have a president named Abraham Lincoln.
Don't make Bill angry, all right? He flies off the handle like you wouldn't believe. Just tread lightly. I was wondering if Meltzer is doing this because Patterson's been having some success also. jumping into nonfiction quite a bit.
It certainly gets my thumbs up. Definitely. If people want to popularize reading nonfiction, even history, which is what this book is.
Yeah.
Fine by me.
Cool.
Fine by me. It should not be left to partisan hacks who don't know what they're talking about and don't care what they're talking about. If Bill O'Reilly's the author of his books, if the author of his books can say that during their one meeting for their collaboration of a book, O'Reilly's only question was, do you think Lincoln would have been a Trump supporter? Well, then that's not history. That's not anything.
No.
This is different from that. This is more enjoyable than that. I ended the book wishing that the JFK assassination had got this treatment.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Talk about what happened, weigh the pros and cons of the various conspiracy theories and where they come from, maybe come to a conclusion, all in 200 and something pages instead of 1,200 pages like Vincent Bugliosi did. And there you go. Then that's a history that actually matters. What Pavlik wanted to do, I don't think it really matters. It would have if he'd actually taken the shot or got the shot, God forbid. Well, that would be different. But instead, this is a trivial footnote in history given off the book.
He'd be thrilled, Mr. Pavlik, I'm sure. That but I'm sure he is watching from afar.
Local postal workers are tough to please.
They are. They absolutely are. Oh my. Yeah, we're right next door, actually, to the post office. The post office and the library share the same.
I don't doubt it for a minute.
I do the show very low sometimes. Anyway, so there's a quasi recommendation, I guess.
Recommend. You will keep reading.
That's all.
You'll start saying, "Who the hell is this Richard Pavlik guy?" But you'll keep reading. Definitely.
Excellent. All right. That's
again a little wistful because it's all this writing talent splurged on a subject that cannot be raised above the trivial.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, my biographer told me the same thing yesterday.
Well, yeah. I mean, imagine, dig up Doris Lessing, have her write an 800-page book about books of the week. You have the same reaction. Okay, great. Yes.
And then Jeff turned his computer on. Anyway, it's very exciting, riveting stuff. Let us move on. I have had a preview of what's coming. I know what's coming. So let's go trepidatiously to the fiction section. Go ahead, Steve. God help us.
In fiction, we're dealing with an anniversary. A beloved literary classic is now 20 years old.
Oh,
so we're dealing with an anniversary, a lavish reprint set.
I'm underdressed.
You did. It's Stephanie Meyer's Twilight series, which started in 2005. In 2005, we got the novel Twilight, in which a moody, mopey author insert character named Bella Swan moves to the Pacific Northwest, where she sees a bunch of suspiciously middle-aged high school students who all clan together in the cafeteria and don't seem to know anybody. And one of them, they're the Cullen family, and one of them is Edward Cullen.
Oh, yes.
And on page 2 of Twilight, we're told that he is gorgeous. And then on page 3, we're told the same thing. Then on page 13, it's stressed, I think for a whole paragraph, they're never more than two sentences, so not much, but that he's really beautiful. And then on page 20, and then 26, and then 30, and then 31, and then 32, and all throughout the book.
I feel like maybe the author is more into Edward than Bella.
She certainly knows who she's selling the book to. All she needs to do for Bella is that she mopes and doesn't get her freaking hair out of her face. But for Edward, we know what we want to stress. But he is just beautiful. He is just beautiful. But it turns out, for any of you who haven't read Twilight, it turns out that Edward has a secret. He is a 100-year-old vampire.
Oh, yes.
Of course, he finds her hot, too. Even though he's 100 years older than she is. And you might ask, well, how on earth could she see vampires in broad daylight?
Right.
In this town in the Pacific Northwest, because it's not broad daylight. Because Stephanie Meyer strained her creativity just enough to think, well, what are these vampires? They can't go out during the day. Where could I put them where there's never any daylight? Oh, the Pacific Northwest. It's cloudy all the time there.
London would have been better.
First of all, that's not how daylight works.
No.
And second, it's not cloudy literally all the time in the Pacific Northwest, right? It's like writing a book in which you're trying to hide a carnivore by putting him in the upper Midwest, where no one literally ever eats vegetables. That's not true. People do occasionally do that.
We have a special area for those people, but yes.
Well, Twilight it's 20 years old.
Yeah.
It and the sequels are 20 years old. So it has been given a lavish reprint, beautiful box set.
Yeah.
Lovely thing for people who want to go to take a stroll down memory lane and read about these books in which a young girl steps out on the advice of her father in order to date a 100-year-old undead man. Mainly because they know from an inherent vibration that they are soulmates. They are destined to be together.
It's great. My daughters would never do that because their father is a 100-year-old undead man. So they were like, oh.
Edward and Bella are destined to be together.
Yeah.
It's the open question is whether or not he will convert her to his faith. I mean, I'm sorry, his biological condition, whether or not he will convert her and whether or not she needs to convert in order to know true love. I guess there's a kind of literary tradition in that. You could say that something like that is happening in Bram Stoker's Dracula. And that probably applies to the secondary characters too. I mean, it's probably completely natural that Jacob, the sexy werewolf in the novel, feels a sexual compulsion towards a newborn baby. That's probably just as natural, right? I will take care of this little baby that I'm letting eyes on for the first time, so that I will take care of her and guard her as she grows, and then once she's ready, I'll be here.
Ick.
Yeah.
What do I know? I'm just
as icky as that is. The ick factor surely can't go any higher on that storyline. Oh wait, she's ready at 13. Oh, okay. The ick factor can go higher.
I don't normally drink on these shows because Steve doesn't like it, but I just need to wash out a little bit here.
Well, it's no real big deal because, although Jacob has a sexual attraction to this newborn baby, it doesn't get any worse than that. Oh, wait, the newborn baby claws, rips, bites, and explodes its way out of Bella's body.
Oh.
So
I only read the first book.
I read the first 3. I, as the kids say, noped out after the third one not because of the bad writing. Needless to say, sorry to ruffle the feathers of any readers who saw the word Twilight and went down memory lane. The writing here is awful.
It's not good.
These are horrible, horrible books. The fact that they're getting a glitzy anniversary box set is an affront to all of literature, going back all the way to Homer and Hesiod. So we're clear on that subject. But it wasn't the crappy writing.
Jeez.
Or the non-stop reminders that Edward Cullen is gorgeous. That's not in the first book. That's in all the books. And it isn't the tedious vampire lore and the different groups of vampires and how they've never been able to get along and they have this secret society or the big reveal, of course, at the end of Twilight. I'm not spoiling anything. It's been 20 years since this steaming pile of turd came to the literary world. The big reveal at the end is what happens if Stephanie Meyer's vampires are subjected to the daylight that they never see in the Pacific Northwest. They do not turn to dust. They don't go, They glitter.
Yes.
If they're exposed to direct, unimpeded sunlight, they sparkle. They evolved that way, you see. Her vampires are not supernatural beings. They evolved that way.
God, I miss Christopher Lee. As I was reading this book, I remember thinking, man, we just need Hammer, the House of Hammer, to come in.
We're told that they evolved as super predators. That's why they're so much faster and so much stronger than other living beings. They evolved as super predators.
I realize I'm from Wisconsin, but aren't vampires supposed to be scary, Steve? I remember feeling that maybe frights would be a really good thing to go for in a horror book.
If you're a super predator, the number one thing you want is to sparkle from a mile away. That's definitely going to help your hunting of your prey.
Yes. Our deer hunters in town do not put on reflective material prior to going out, except to not get shot by their fellow hunters. That's that's about as bad as it gets. So, well, okay. So here's the problem here. We got two leads that have been buried here, so to speak. One,
this is why I have a producer. Otherwise, I would go off the rails and stay off the rails.
Because this is two old dudes on the internet bitching about Twilight. So something very wrong about that, I think, just inherently. One old dude and one.
No, at all. I took one look at the first book and knew we were destined to be together in 2025.
We are. So
oh my freaking God.
So there's that. Also, you keep mentioning the vampires in almost a religious sect type of way. And if I'm not mistaken, is not the author a part of the LDS church? I just wanted to, I was curious about that.
What? The author is part of a religious sect that is weird and does child brides and believes in predestination. What?
I wanted to make sure we got to that at some point.
You astonish me.
You wouldn't have problems if you got the UFO detector from CPL radio. If they're strong, might do vampires too. I don't know, but let us know.
What I want our readers, our viewers, and listeners to do, I always have a call to action to them.
Yes, you do.
What I want you to do, I'm sure that a lot of you grew up on Twilight. I'm sure that you have fond memories about it, and that's okay. But what I want you to do is not buy this set, but take out Twilight from the Cedarburg Public Library and read it again with fresh eyes. Don't do the mental shift and read it again with your 13-year-old eyes. Read it as an adult. And
might that be possible for some
creepiest damn books you've ever read, and not in the way vampire books are supposed to be creepy.
The wrong creep factor.
Tell me if you don't find it not only really, really dumb, it is really, really dumb, but tell me also that you don't find it deeply disturbing in ways that are going to make you wonder how you turned out so good. These books got to you right at the worst possible time they could have.
We should not lose sight of the fact as well that these were converted into wildly popular movies.
Wildly popular movies, yes.
So
indeed.
There's that.
Wildly popular movies from whom there have been almost no survivors.
That's true.
What is his name? Michael Sheen?
Oh yeah, yeah.
He's the leader of the evil vampires, because I guess there's vampires. He plays the leader of the evil vampires. Of course, he's had a thriving career because he's a terrific actor.
Wonderful actor,
if you plug sub-terrific actors into these kind of stereotyped roles, every time they go outside, much less every time they get cast in a movie, someone in the crowd or 1,000 people in the crowd are going to point at them and say sparkly vampires. And you have nobody to blame but yourself. Yes, it gave you, buy your own island money, but it nixed your career.
Yeah.
Or didn't nick. I mean, both the two leads in the movies have gone on to have careers. Robert Pattinson is a very edgy type guy, and yet he got cast as Batman.
Got Batman, yep.
And what's the name of Bella Swan in the movies?
Yes. She has one. She does have it. Oh boy, it'll get me after the show.
Her name, because she had a career.
Yes.
Until she was revealed openly as someone who cheated. She had a career until she was revealed as an odious person, someone who was the other woman for a married man.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Every time I see her on talk shows, she's completely not beguiling in any sort of way.
The one thing we don't want in Hollywood are non-wholesome people.
Doors closed for us. So there we are. Twilight's back. Who asked for it? We don't know.
Listening to the podcast will not have seen the image that my producer just flashed up, but I can tell you about it if you watch the video on YouTube. But it was images like that made Steve a fan of Archie comics.
Oh man, our first episode, I told him put that Jughead hat away. So there we are, our own little Riverdale here on the internet.
My college years are accurately reflected in that picture.
I was going to put it back up, but I'm not.
No.
You're just a little too happy over there, Donnie. Let's move on to the wild cards if we haven't
Well,
already.
a sausage eating competition will always make someone happy. I think we can all agree on that, can't we? And see what I'm doing here? I'm doing the creepy kind of conditioning that Twilight. It's all meta. I've gone meta on you.
Connie also has a
You know, I'm not going to say anything about the couch, but I miss that hair.
Do you? Well, you've been working on it.
You're doing their best. Make me beautiful.
If you're listening, you're so lost, and that's what we like. There we are. So I have wild cards, books that Steve has no idea what I grabbed this morning. Although sometimes I feel like he does.
A little endemic feature of Books of the Week, if I might. I know that we've been working hard to convince you not to watch the show, but I might do so. This is the only book podcast anywhere in the world where the guy in charge of buying books for a library is talking to a critic who's read every book in the world.
Seems kind of dangerous, doesn't it? Kind of riding the razor blade here on Books of the Week, and
it's the books that make it dangerous. It's not the books that make it dangerous.
It's probably true. This actually was the original title of this show, so I'm a little annoyed that Lucid died. Is now available in hardcover. Steve, what's going on here?
I read it, of course.
Of course.
At its heart, it is just wish fulfillment. That's all. It is just wish fulfillment. It has a lot of bells and whistles. It has a lot of science and including the science of dying, the science of brain decay, body decay that you might find interesting if you're in that mood. But it's ultimately wish fulfillment. Well, it's telegraphed right there in the title. The book would deny this up and down, but the book is based on the hope, maybe even the scientific premise, that death is not the end. If you can just stay aware and awake, if you can just know what's going on, that maybe the book says otherwise. The book says, the science of brain termination is clear, but I don't think they believe it. I don't think they want the reader to believe it.
Well, step one is to review a recording of life, they say here, which is kind of interesting.
Like the element, there's an element running through the book that urges people to be present in your life, be aware of it, seize on it. And I really like that. I really like that. That is, of course, the right thing to do. However, I want to point out, just parenthetically to our listeners, you are an animal. You are a biological organism. Your brain is you. Your brain is your personality and all of your memories. They aren't contained anywhere else. And your brain is an extremely delicate, soft tissue. It is like tissue paper. Picture wetting Kleenex. That's how delicate it is. And it fires those neurons to make your personality and give you your memories and give you your hopes for the future. Your hope that someday this podcast will end. Heavily oxygenated blood that is pumped through your brain. So it's not just the blood, it's what your lungs are doing. They're filling the blood with oxygen, and that fires that whole system. The minute that stops, those tissues start to decay. And you die, and you go away. Those memories don't go anywhere. They are being borne aloft by the tissues of your brain, and once that stops, they disappear. They don't go anywhere. You don't go anywhere. You are not living inside your body. You are your body. Specifically, you are your brain. So you can do lucid dying. You can do pellucid dying. You can do hallucinogenic dying. It's not. There is no continuation. I know the book would say otherwise, but it seemed to me that it was saying, well, if you do a really good job at dying, maybe. Maybe. No, you are a biological organism. You don't think this about any other biological organism. You don't think that the bug you stepped on, well, we don't step on bugs, do we? Because it's 10 degrees Fahrenheit.
I'd kill for a bug. Just a cicada, something, help. What I wouldn't do for a bug. Well,
but I have two questions before we go on to the next wild card. One, is Twilight popular?
It was, and you get
imagine that.
Oh yeah. You could, by the state of our copies, you can tell it was really popular. But you get, if it goes out at all now, what's interesting is it's usually the daughter of somebody who, a mother who loved it as a kid and said, "Oh, you got to have this experience. You got." I don't know why I made her Jewish, but well, I do know why I made her Jewish, but never mind.
She's nagging a kid. So she's either Jewish or Irish.
Exactly. So, darling, you gotta spend some time with the Cullen family. So that's the only time it goes out, and it always, amusingly, it always comes back really quick because the daughter openly rejects it, I think, and says, "Mom, this is weird." No, it's not popular.
I have a strong suspicion that a large chunk of the reading demographic for the Twilight Saga is middle-aged men. For all the worst in the world. All the worst reasons in the world. I think it's them. But so I'm glad to hear that it's young girls, and also that they have the sense to reject it. But I'm also curious to know, would a book like Lucid Dying go out at the library?
Yes. Yeah, we have a dedicated sort of science nonfiction, or pseudoscience or whatever. It won't be out on the streets long, but it will. We have a dedicated 10, 20.
Does a book about dying get borrowed more often in the Wisconsin winter?
This is a summer read, Steve. We'll take this to the pool. We'll take this to Lake Michigan.
The original name of Wisconsin winters.
That is true. That is true. Oh, I felt it this morning, I tell you. There seems to be, it wasn't intentionally Twilight based, Lucid Dying, which the Cullen fan would say, it never happens. But then we're going to go on to the word swan with Order of Swans from Jude Deveraux.
I have not read this one. So all you people out there with your little Steve Point trackers, I haven't read this one. I've read Jude Deveraux. I've read a lot of Jude Deveraux, but I haven't read this one.
She's not normally a fantasy writer, but this seems fantasy-ish.
It seems fantasy-ish. Yeah, it seems designed to jump on that bandwagon. Some of her older, like 30-year-old romance novels are really good. They're really, really good. Excellent. Is she represented at all at the library? Does she have a backlist? Do you have any of her? She is.
Oh, she has a shelf. She has
all her modern stuff where she does thrillers and police shoot 'em up. So any of the older romances, are there any of those?
Definitely, absolutely, yeah. Well, and we keep our authors together, even though when they jump, I was actually struggling with that this week because I had to catalog this and I just put it in Miss Deveraux's area. But I'm like, do I put this in science fiction fantasy because I have a shelf dedicated to that? And I usually prefer to keep authors together, so I do it that way. But these are the things that librarians wring their hands about for 8 to 10 hours. The next thing you know, it's time to go home. It's great. Be a librarian, kids. Anyway,
you can be a librarian without being subjected to this kind of podcast. You can be a librarian without doing a podcast.
Absolutely.
I can wholeheartedly recommend the author, just not that book.
No. Okay. All right. Well, it's short. It's pretty skinny. So, and if it's fantasy, there'll probably be 8 more coming because some agent probably said, "Jude, do a series." But here is Steve and I. Not many people know this, but in the late '80s, we had a podcast as well. Never mind that the technology.
I had people saying to me, "How long have you two been working, and where is the earlier work?" Because you couldn't do a show like this. We haven't been working for 30 years.
Well, Steve, do you remember our love and whiskey days?
Oh my, it's another Steve point. I have not read this.
Oh my gosh, I swear I don't do it intentionally. But both make for good radio. So this looks like some sort of, it's a remarkable true story of all of our favorites here in Wisconsin. Jack Daniel, his master distiller, Nearest Green, and the improbable rise of Uncle Nearest. So this is a story about
whiskey.
Yeah, booze. Drink up, bottoms up, Wisconsin.
I do not understand people who drink stuff that tastes and smells like gasoline. I do not. It tastes and smells like gasoline, and also all the pleasant effects of having a glass of wine. No, you don't get any of those. No. It makes you furiously angry. You wake up in the morning, 2 mornings ago, with your knuckles bare and bloody with glass flecks in them, and you don't remember how that happened. So
I have to be careful. We have to be careful here because we had a a library event at our local distillery recently, and they were very nice, and they donated half the funds to the library. So we love them too, and they're adding a lot of flavor to it. It's like strawberry with gasoline.
And the people who favor this kind of stuff, the people who aren't insane, people who aren't just honky tonk drunk all the time, will say that they do prefer sipping it.
Yes,
very slowly.
Absolutely.
I guess I've never tried that. I guess maybe that would
be fun.
Work.
Yeah,
I don't know.
They all seem to be having fun. From afar, I've looked upon them, and they seem to be having. I'm not invited to any of those parties, so story of my life. So there we are, Love and Whiskey. Maybe you'll want to pour yourself a tall one and give it a read. I started this book last night, and the writing is lovely, but I'm fearful.
Yes.
Here's my fear, Steve, and you can tell me if I'm well-founded. It seems like it's going to be a feel-good book, and nothing makes me feel worse than a feel-good book. I'll have you know. But the writing is lovely. I like the writing, but go ahead.
Why don't you read our listeners the flap? First of all, tell them what it is. It's.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, I got a weird thing on my screen. There we go. Much better. All right. So yes, I should tell them. How to Read a Book by Monica Wood is the title, and nice little cover there. Looks like a little quaint little bookshop with folding chairs in front of it.
You said you have a weird thing on your screen. Are we done? I know you have a weird thing on your screen. All of our viewers know you have a weird thing.
Wait a minute. Let me get the devices out here. we may have issues. All right. There we are. So here's a bit of the flap, shall we? It is Violet Powell, a 22-year-old from rural Abbott Falls, Maine. Your neck of the woods there, Steve, is being released from prison after serving 22 months for a drunk driving crash that killed a local teacher. I'm not going to say anything about that. Harriet Larson, a retired English teacher who runs the prison book club, is facing the unsettling prospect of an empty nest. Unsettling. Anyway, Frank Daigle, a retired machinist, hasn't yet come to grips with the complications of his marriage to the woman Violet killed. And these are the days of our lives.
The weirdest thing is here, we've got a kind of dad joke inception going on here, because not only do I know exactly which jokes came to your mind, and not only do you know exactly which jokes came to my mind, but we have done enough shows so that our listeners know what jokes are coming to our mind, and they're now coming to their mind.
We don't have to say them anymore. Isn't that nice? It's kind of Doge. We've actually cut out some of the jokes because they're already there.
The reason that I've read this book, of course, because of its title.
Of course.
Yes. The reason that you've got the face, that I've got the Steve Donahue face, is because there is a thing that is happening in the reading world. It is being turbocharged by Book Talk. And that is something I've railed about anyway. I railed about it before Book Talk turbocharged it, but I rail about it even more now, which is books as magic. Books as a kind of scarf that you wear.
Right.
A kind of lifestyle choice.
Mm-hmm.
That you know just perfectly well, and you're not wrong. I can tell you're not wrong. That it's going to be the magic of books that solves all those legitimately dark plot threads in this book. It's going to be books like that. It's going to be this wonderful bookstore, this warm, cozy, bring us all together bookstore. I have been saying for decades now to people who do this sort of. I had no idea that Book Talk was coming along to make the vibe of being a reader into something that you could do without ever reading. I've been saying for decades to dedicated readers, people who actually have. The irony here is that there is actually a magic of reading, and I've been saying for decades, is that what it's like? And they say, no, absolutely not. It's dangerous. It's unsettling. There is a magic to it, but it's a magic that involves tearing you apart and putting you back together. Then it's not, I've found just the right book with just the right cup of chai latte with just the right cat looking on. It's not that at all.
It can be, but it shouldn't be all the time.
No, and it also can't be programmed to be that, which is what these books always do. That there's a flood of these things coming out of Japan.
Yes, yes, there are.
they're always here. They can be programmed to be that way. Here's a book if you have heartache, not 10 books, not different book for each person depending on what they like to read. You read this book if you have heartache, and you won't know about it unless I tell you about it, and I will tell you how to read it.
I've found my taste for mawkishness is in my middle age. I was okay with it probably in my 20s when I was mawkishly walking around, but this is just and yeah,
mawkishness, the mawkification of reading and books.
Yeah, not a fan. Well, I'll finish it because it's short. Yeah, I was afraid of that. I know what's funny, and maybe it's because I'm hanging around with you too much. But by page 2, I was like, "Oh, I know where we're heading here." Oy vey.
When you get to the midway point of the book, and keep in mind, I wanted you to read the description so our readers would know that this book is entirely based on incredibly serious tragedy.
Yes. Yeah.
At the midpoint of the book, before then, probably you're going to be having the same reaction that I did. You're going to be saying out loud to the page, "You want to kind of bear down here? How about you bear down a little?"
I believe there was a car accident recently we should be talking about. Yes. Oh boy.
You can't do a feel-good book about a drunk driver who destroys a family. You can't do that.
Monica Wood feels otherwise. So there we are. But and I don't want to completely trash this thing, but like I said, the writing was lovely. I wish she'd write something else because I liked her prose.
Does the book like this do well at the library?
It's the holds are ticking up almost. You can watch them animatedly ticking up. Yeah, it's going to do well. So
I guess you could ask, what do I know? Except we all know the answer to that.
Don't ask that question, people.
I know that many people with this book on hold are wrong. You're all losers.
I asked that question once, and what's great is I only have a small scar. So let's end on this guy here because I have a weird relationship with him too. Not as weird as this, Steve, but it's a weird relationship.
I should point out when mentioning your scar that although there's a group of people out there who are keeping a Donahue checklist of the books I haven't read, there's a much larger group of people out there who are eagerly waiting for me to fire you on air.
We have enough of that going on in our culture right now. Please, let's take it easy this week. Well, this guy here, he's back, and this is such a predictable Murakami book. It's the city and its uncertain walls. And I like to say it's Haruki and his uncertain book. I haven't opened it yet. I like him sometimes. I feel like I'm not going to like this. I have this sense.
You can perfectly summarize the effect of this book by the fact that when you weren't certain what the title is and we're going to turn the book around to get the words right, I almost said, don't bother. Don't bother. Make up 5 random words. Just do that.
Boston cream pie and brass tacks. I don't know, whatever this is. Did you do the whole thing?
I did. Yes. With the new Murakami, you have to read it.
Yeah. I actually liked his prior one, that Killing Commendatore. I kind of enjoyed that. I was okay with
Well, we'll have to agree to disagree.
I didn't love it, but I mean, it was fine.
It had a good premise. You can get that jacket copy.
Yeah.
It had a good premise. This one doesn't even have a premise, good or bad. It doesn't have a premise.
A premiseless book. How revolutionary.
This word that has gone all around my second home away from literature, which is YouTube. There's a word for a certain kind of video on YouTube. It's a kind of video where the person who makes the video is doing the least possible that they can do. They're tapping into a few things that they've heard just recently. They're doing it just long enough to make bank with ads, and then they're out. And that word is slop. Those are referred to on YouTube as slop content. And this is a slop novel.
Oh dear.
This is a slop novel. So if you hear Murakami give an interview where he talks about how, I stared into the distance over the treetops and worked hard to come up with to chisel this next scene into place, he is simply lying. He might be high, but he is lying. This is just slop. It's just
It's lots of slop. And if you like Murakami, you might be happy with this book. I mean, there are people out there who live and die by his.
There are. Yes, there are men. Usually, let's be clarified. There are men. It's not people. There are men out there who live and die by his slop. But every once in a while, in a book, Murakami will actually show up. He doesn't in this book. He does occasionally in Killing Commendatory. I think that's probably why it struck you a little different. With this book, my initial reaction, just use any words you want for the title, that is the reaction you're going to have when you're somehow find yourself on page 200 of this book. You have no idea what's happening or what has happened. You're not interested in any of it. You can't predict any of it because it all seems like it's happening at random.
Dude, that's meaningful.
I know this is a Japanese author, but nevertheless, the feeling that you have at the end of the book is going to be exactly the feeling you have an hour after a large Chinese feast, which is, I don't call it. It was cheap. I don't think I ate anything. I'm already hungry.
I'm jittery from MSG. Oh man. Well, it's available here at the Cedarburg Public Library.
It's unfortunately for me, it's not a recommend. I know he has devoted fanboys, I should say. No woman has ever read Haruki Murakami, but I know he has devoted fans. But for this book anyway, I'm going to give my usual finger wagging admonition to our listeners that you have only so much reading time. You are lucidly dying as we speak.
Yes.
You could come up with, at the Cedarburg Public Library, you could find a lot of better stuff to read than this.
Yeah, absolutely.
I have to read the new Murakami. A book critic who says he hasn't read the new Murakami, but you don't have to do that. So
don't.
Right.
There we go. Yes.
Did you order a copy of the collected letters of Seamus Heaney?
No. We did not.
Okay.
I don't think so.
Well, you come up with another example. What about the last Maisie Dobbs novel, the one that says goodbye to her?
Yes.
There you go. You don't have to look any further than that. Did you also get the anniversary reprint of the first Maisie Dobbs book?
We did. Yes, I did. Absolutely, we did.
Here you go. Yeah. Read Maisie Dobbs instead.
Look what Steve has done for you today. It could have been tragic that you'd be stuck in the uncertain walls between the uncertain.
You couldn't remember the title even from 5 minutes ago. No, you couldn't, and it's nothing wrong with that. No. The lesson to take away here is that the very last reason you should use to read a book is because you think you should, because someone's telling you should. That's a terrible reason to do anything.
Yeah.
Watch this show. You should watch this show.
You absolutely should. And since we're talking about things you should do, Steve, we want
it can only be for one thing.
Just so you know, there's this little site called Patreon, and over there you will find a version, a cipher of us over there, and it is patreon.com/books of the week. If you have some spare change in your pocket, for $3, you get to do anything you could possibly want to do over there. For $10, you can do some of the things that you possibly don't want to do over there. So those are the 2 tiers.
We have at least one video that is patrons only.
Absolutely. 2. There's 2 videos over there.
2 videos. Yes, and since we know that's possible now, patrons are paying. They have a say in what we do. What kind of video would you like us to do? I have received privately a whole bunch of suggestions for patron-only videos, and they're all, could you and Jeff talk about movies?
Do they know what they're asking? Do they have any concept of what the lion they've just turned loose?
Pick a movie from the 1980s, any movie from the 1980s, and Jeff and I could talk about it nonstop for 3 hours without any notes. So that's a dangerous request.
Very dangerous request.
But we don't get any money.
No.
Your donation.
Not a bit. It all goes to the Friends of the Cedarburg Public Library, who is a remarkable group who, for some reason, have decided to support this show in their own way. And Steve has information.
One of the Friends of the Cedarburg Public Library is a sparkly vampire. And because it's Wisconsin, that has never been found out.
Maybe in mid-July we'll find out who it is, but no guarantees. There we are.
I would say that the way to identify the person would be to wait for mid-July for a sunny day and then look for the friend of the Cedarburg Public Library who is hiding from Jeff. But they all do that all the time. So that's not going to help me.
I have no friends. You know what I do? So I go to
enemy.
What's nice is that I go to my room and play with my man from Uncle Finger Puppets. So I have plenty of friends. Thank you very much.
Lifelike finger puppets. So we're back to Twilight. Creepy. And not in the good way.
Oh my goodness. We will not be selling the Twilight finger puppet set anytime soon on this show.
All I'm saying is that's a mighty attractive baby.
That can't be the last. That can't be the last line of this show. That can't be.
We always talk about the new Murakami. Tell me right now, without just looking at me, what's the title?
Yes. It is cell phones.
Any words?
Cell phones and oak trees. I'm positive. Or something like that. Sorry, Haruki. Have a good week. See you soon. Bye-bye, all. Thank you, Steve.